On the line with us is Ryan Mauro. He's a national security analyst with the Clarion Project, professor of Homeland Security at Liberty University, Jerry Falwell's old college. ClarionProject.org is the website. You can tweet him at Ryan Mauro, M-A-U-R-O, R-Y-A-N, M-A-U-R-O. Ryan, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. So you wrote this piece over at ClarionProject.org, Trump counterterror speech, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You say he vindicated decades of Islamist propaganda. Give us a summary of this.
Sure. The good part for me was the idea of having an ideological vetting process that I think should obviously include people other than Muslims. The bad part was the complete lack of details in regards to his proposal to support moderate Muslim reformers, which I think we should be doing overseas. And then the ugly part that really just blew my mind was when he chose to emphasize repeatedly that we should take the oil, which would require invading Iraq, having a long-term military occupation, and vindicating one of the chief propaganda themes of Islamist terrorists that we've been fighting against for decades, and now we'll have a clip like that to use for decades in the future. Yeah.
You know, I don't disagree with you on the ugly at the very end, and the bad is kind of weird. On the good, you know, let's have a more stringent test to get into the United States.
Sure.
You know, the guys who came in and did 9/11, they came in on, I mean, they were all college-educated, wealthy Saudis, and they were, they came in on student visas. They were the kind of people that we say we want to have come into the United States. They came from you know, one of our closest allies, Saudi Arabia. What kind of test are you going to give somebody like that they're going to be so stupid they're going to fail? I mean, is it going to be, you know, how many branches of government does the Constitution create, or is it going to be, you know, what was Beaver Cleaver's mother's name? I mean, how do you? This just seems to be nonsensical, frankly. You know, our government can spend years trying to find you know, and you know, suspecting somebody of being a spy and trying to find out if they were really here. You know, we went through this in World War II. We went through this during the Cold War with the Soviets. What possible thing could be done to try and filter these folks out on the one hand, and then on the other hand, you know, I could be wrong, but I think that most, or at least many, of the so-called Muslim terrorist attacks, or whatever you want to call them, here in the United States, radical Islamists, have been from people who are U.S. citizens. So what do you do about that?
Yeah, so it's not this solution that's going to solve everything, but there are some common sense things that we can do that we've actually even done in the past. So, for example, if someone is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood overseas and they want to come to the United States, you don't let them. If someone's connected to the...
Well, hang on just a second. Let's just stop right there. The Muslim Brotherhood, you know, got elected in Egypt. It's a political party there. It got thrown out, you know, with a little help from us. But basically, they were doing the same thing that the Ba'athist Party, which was a secular party, was doing in Iraq, which was to say, you want a good government job, become a party member. And so you don't have to be an ideologue to be a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. You just have to have wanted a job in Egypt back 4 years ago. I mean, you're going to exclude somebody who is an engineer or a professor or a scientist just because they check that box off?
Because you didn't have to join the Muslim Brotherhood to do that, actually. It's a heavily ideological movement. They were never just talking about jobs. Even during the campaign, when Mohammed Morsi was out there preaching, it was all about theocracy. There's lots of anti-Semitism. And keep in mind, Hamas is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. So, yes, I think I would exclude them when you consider how many people would love to come to the United States. I think that's a good benchmark. So is, for example, the extremist Christians in places like Uganda that have said that you should execute gays and things like that. I don't want them coming either.
You've got Republican members of Congress who went over to Uganda and preached that stuff. I mean, that was supported by the E Street family. Jeff Charlotte outed that whole thing. I mean, that was you know, these Jim DeMint and his buddies, as I recall.
I don't remember them actually advocating executing Christians or endorsing that, but
executing gays.
I'm sorry. Yeah, executing gays.
They funded the guy who was advocating executing gays and who went over there, and they defended him in Congress. Really? I mean, there's no shortage of paper trail on that one.
Okay, well,
So it's like, which raises the question, and I think this is a reasonable question that people on opposite sides of all these various issues, like you and I are, can probably have a reasonable discussion about, which is, to what extent is pretty much everything that we're experiencing blowback? I mean, we send evangelists over to Uganda to preach the gospel of killing gay people, and then they start killing gay people, and we say, oh my God, we shouldn't let those people in the United States. We send soldiers into Iraq to take oil, and Dick Cheney, in his oil meetings, and as Larry Klayman, the head of Judicial Watch, the conservative, group that actually started the lawsuit that led to the impeachment of Bill Clinton. He's now doing the lawsuit that just got the State Department documents from Hillary Clinton. He is the one. Larry Klayman is the one who tracked this stuff down. Dick Cheney, in March of 2001, 8 months before 9/11, 7 months before 9/11, however, I can't do the math that fast, but he had his energy task force, and they were literally dividing up. He published the maps. They were dividing up the oil fields in Iraq and deciding which companies and which countries they were going to sell them to. And by the way, American companies are getting some of that oil right now.
Well, it seems like you agree with the premise that radical ideologies result in radical behavior. And so that's really the premise behind...
Well, I agree with it. What I'm suggesting is that our behavior is provoking radical ideologies.
U.S. behavior can facilitate it for sure. When Donald Trump says things like, go in and take the oil and just pillage them, a pro-pillaging foreign policy, yes, it does vindicate Islamist propaganda that they say this proves that our radical ideology is correct, and it makes it more attractive. So that's why we do have to be careful.
But see, their radical ideology, by and large, would not exist if, since the 1930s, we had not been helping Saudi Arabia promote Wahhabism and Salafism.
We didn't create that, though. Like, it's true that the U.S.
We funded it.
Right. So that can be faulted, but we didn't create it. It would still be around because you have groups like the Muslim Brotherhood.
But I don't think they'd be paying any attention to us.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. Because
why is it that they're not going after Paraguay?
Oh, well, ISIS actually addressed this in their latest magazine, where they said, we would hate you nonetheless. Our goal is global conquest, but there is a prioritization that goes...
Yeah, that's bluster.
So the United States... No, in a way, they're supporting what you're saying, but there's a broader worldview that I think you're missing. They're going after the United States because they view us as participating in the near enemy battlefield, but they would come around to us anyway. That's what they said. But
again, I go back to the point that we and the Saudis created this ideology. I mean, the Saudis clearly are the major villains in my mind on this. But we never said to Saudi Arabia, stop this. You've got to, and we should have at the 50s. I mean, you had the Dulles brothers helping promote Wahhabism. We had, during the Eisenhower administration, and frankly, during the Kennedy administration.
There's no disagreement between us on that.
Yeah, so it's like, wow. So, well,
the bottom line is that the ideology is here, and there have to be common sense measures in order to deal with the fact that a lot of them want to come here, whether they're Islamic or not. So I think there are a lot of common sense things that you can do just by doing link analysis, which professionals have done in the past, and it's kind of gone to the wayside.
Well, we do that right now when we vet immigrants. I mean, my sister-in-law is an immigrant. I watched the process she had to go through. It was not a small thing. It was huge. There were all these in-person interviews. Her relatives had to go in and testify.
So that's the missing part.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, an interesting conversation. Ryan Mauro, National Security Analyst with the Clarion Project. ClarionProject.org is the website, and you can tweet him at RyanMauro. Ryan, thanks.
Thank you.
Good talking with you. We'll be back 15 minutes past the hour.